All right. Let's see. Good morning. Pardon board is reconvening. We're at Louisiana State Penitentiary. It is 10:45 a.m. on Monday, February 13th, 2023. Would the staff at the penitentiary please introduce yourself for the record?
Warren Hooper, Debbie Warren Falgood, Reverend Lamoureux, classification.
Taylor Grafton, classification.
J.D. Surgeon, transition specialist.
Armand.
Alan Martin.
All right. At the A team. All right. Thank you. And we have our first case before us. Mr. Hicks, good morning.
Good morning to you also, ma'am.
Would you, we're still bringing some folks here into the room with us. So we'll do our preliminary work. Would you introduce yourself to the party board, Mr. Hicks? Tell us your name and your DOC number.
My name is Ron Christopher Hicks, and my DOC number is 291928.
Okay, and counsel, would you introduce yourself for the record, please, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Amy Myers, and I'm here with the Parole Project. And with permission, I wish to make a brief statement at the end.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hicks, I'll read some identifying information into the record, after which we'll conduct our interview with you. Your case has been assigned to Mr. Roche. But first, let me just acknowledge all the folks you have in the room there with you at the state penitentiary. I won't read all of their names off the list. We also have some folks here, both in support and opposition. Let me just, we have, let's see, speaking in opposition will be Ms. Elizabeth St. Germain, who's joined us by Zoom. Oh, she's here with us, okay. She'll be speaking in opposition. We have other members of the victim's family also joining us. We have some folks here in the room with us in support, also by Zoom. And we'll have this speaking in support will be Professor Angela Bell, Ronnie Oliver or Olivier, I'm not sure, and Martin Alexander. At the appropriate time, call on all those who indicated they'd like to speak. But first, let me read the information. So, Mr. Hicks, you're classified as a first felony offender. You're here this morning seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in December 1990 to a life sentence in St. Langton Parish for a second-degree murder conviction. Mr. Hicks, is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Would you answer Mr. Roche's questions, please?
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, Ron.
How you doing, Mr. Roche? How are you?
It's fine. Ron, I have sort of a lengthy presentation. And if any of the information in this presentation is not true, would you please correct me?
Yes, sir.
And I did write everything down, so I'll be switching from page to page. So okay?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, fellow board members, we have Ron Christopher Hicks, DOC number 291-928. Ron is here this morning seeking a recommendation for a commutation of sentence for a 1999 conviction for second-degree murder in Opelousas, Louisiana. The victim in this case was James Leonard Jones Jr., a close friend of Ron Hicks, and some say they were best friends. Hicks also sold cocaine to Mr. Jones. Hicks stated during the interview with parole and probation that he started abusing alcohol at the age of 17 or 18 years old and was addicted to cocaine at the age of 19, which incidentally was the age when he murdered Mr. Jones. I'm going to give a brief explanation of what happened. If anything is different, would you please correct me, Mr. Hicks?
Yes, sir.
Respectfully, Mr. Roche, the crime happened in 1990, not 1999. So it's now been 33 years. I said 1990. Oh,
Yes.
okay, I beg your pardon. Yeah. The conviction was in 1990. The crime occurred on February 1st, 1990.
Yes, sir.
Am I correct?
Yes, sir. You're correct.
Okay. So the explanation is that Ron Hicks was a friend, and some people say best friend, of Mr. James Leonard Jones Jr. And he sold cocaine for Mr. Jones and in large quantities. And this particular time, he used some of the product for his addiction. And when it came time to turn the money in, Mr. Hicks was short. And Mr. Harris didn't give him any product for 2 or 3 months. And then after 2 or 3 months, being a friend of Mr. Hicks, he started giving him a little product, and he used that product, and he used some of that product for his own use again. When it came time to turn in the money, he was short, and Mr. Harris didn't give him any more product and demanded that he repay for the product. Then on February 1st, 1990, they were at the same nightclub in Appaloosa, Louisiana. An argument ensued about the money that he owed Mr. Jones. Mr. Hicks pulled out a firearm, shot in the direction of Mr. Jones, ran out the club, got to the nearest phone, called his father. His father picked him up, brought him to his mother's house. And at that point, when he told his parents what he had done, asked to be brought to the Appaloosa Police Department. Upon arriving at the police department, he said you were the one who shot in a nightclub, and they informed you that Mr. Jones was dead. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that about the way it happened?
That is correct. The way that it happened. This is a few other little situations that I would express to the board that
basically that.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you did sell drugs on the behalf of Mr. Jones.
That's the part that I wanted. We were all selling drugs together, Mr. Roche.
Great. Good. So basically, why did you have to turn in your proceeds from Mr. Jones?
Because what I was doing was my addiction. I used to go to guys that we were putting drugs on the street to, and I used to get the drugs from them. I would go pick it up, and I would use those drugs, and that's how the money started coming up short. I wouldn't get drugs put in my hand because of my addiction, so I would just pull up to anybody that was selling drugs for us, and I would get the drugs and use it. And that's the part that I just wanted to emphasize. that
But the argument ensued because of the money that you owed Mr. Jones.
yes, sir.
Okay. Let's continue. On February 1st, 1990, the same night of the murder, Mr. Hicks was arrested and charged with second-degree murder of Mr. James Bennett Jones Jr. On October 9th, 1990, Mr. Hicks was found guilty at trial as charged of second-degree murder. And on December 21st, 1990, he was sentenced to life at hard labor at DOC without probation, parole, or suspension and sentence. Mr. Hicks has 2 other arrests on his criminal record around the same period of time. One arrest was for attempted second-degree murder in December of 1989, and the other distribution of cocaine in January of 1991. On January 8th, 1991, 3 weeks after Mr. Hicks had been convicted and sentenced to life in prison, he pled guilty to the amended charge of aggravated battery and aggravated battery. He received 5 years on attempted aggravated battery and 6 years on the aggravated battery charge. On the distribution of cocaine charge, he received a 5-year sentence. All these sentences were to run concurrently to each other and to the life sentence. Mr. Hicks is currently 52 years old. At the time of the offense, he was 19. He's been incarcerated 32 years this month. He has a low risk assessment. He has a low needs assessment. He's housed in minimum custody. He has a good institutional record. Work and security supervisors have excellent remarks. The classification officer says, we call on Mr. Hicks to do multiple tasks, and he never hesitates when asked to do those tasks. He participates in Malachi Dads, Leadership Builders, and a sober group, Sign Language Club, Heart Lookout Project, and many, many other organizations where he performs community service. He has a good transition plan with the Louisiana Parole Project and employment with the Physician Care Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Briefly tell this panel and give us a description of your daily duties and responsibilities.
Yes, sir, Mr. Roche. Every day, my responsibility is to get up in the morning. I look to see if there's any call outs because I interpret for deaf offenders. If they have to go to the hospital classification office, I interpret for them and sign interpret for the deaf, and I voice interpret for whatever staff that they are appearing in front of. I also work with the Braille program, and that's Brailling books for people that are blind, that don't have access to certain materials. I also, throughout the course of the day, is minister in different areas of the prison the area that I'm housed in. I go to the cell blocks. I go to the different dormitories and counsel with people pretty much most of the day. On Tuesdays and on Saturdays, I conduct a worship service that I've been doing for the past 29 years. I also lead a worship service inside of a medical dorm that I'm housed in, which is Ash 4. We do a dorm for the guys that are in that unit that can't sometime attend services. So we hold a service for those guys so that they can be able to hear the word of God. And that's basically my life all day, mentoring, interacting with guys that have been sentenced here through the different courts for the reentry program. I've worked in that department. And then I also assist the chaplains department in their duties.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Are you a trustee?
Yes, sir.
What level trustee?
I've been a Class A trustee since 1997.
So we're talking 25 plus years.
Yes, sir.
Have you held this trustee status continually for the 25 years?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Opposition in this case comes from the 27th JDC District Attorney's Office, who is strongly opposed to any clemency in this case. The 27th JDC judge had no comment. The St. Landry Parish Sheriff's Office has submitted a very strong letter in opposition to your clemency. Also, the Chief of Police of Opelousas, Louisiana, has submitted a very strong letter of opposition. Give me a second, and I'm going to list all the other letters of opposition that we received. The first letter is from the victim's mother, Ms. Elizabeth St. Romain, who is adamantly opposed to your clemency and will speak to that fact today at the hearing. We have opposition from Centuria Henry Flagg, who is the mother of James Jones III, the son of the victim, and she was pregnant for her son at the time the victim was murdered. We have a letter from the victim's son, who was born 4 or 5 months after the offense, and he submitted a very strong letter of opposition. We have opposition from Lolita Ortez, the victim's aunt. Opposition from Rachel St. Romain, the sister of the victim. We have opposition from another sister, Miss Erica Ugile. We have opposition from the Chief of Police of Opelousas, Louisiana, who submitted a letter. We have opposition from the Sheriff, Bobby Depot of St. Landry Parish, who submitted a letter of opposition. We have opposition from David P. Trahan, the victim's uncle. We have another uncle, Chris Trahan, who submitted a letter of opposition. And we have a letter from another uncle who happened to be the Opelousas police officer that was dispatched to the scene and had to tell his sister that her son had been murdered. And his name is Ronnie D. F. Trahan Sr. And that is the end of the letters of opposition. Let me go back to my report. 1 second, please. Now, let's talk about your program. And that's on page 127. Your program. First of all, we're gonna talk about when you first arrived, some 3 or 4 years after you arrived, you earned your GED, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In between that time, in 2019, you received GED, a graduate degree in mentorship from the New Orleans Theological Seminary, an associate, a bachelor's, and a master's degree from the New Orleans Theological Seminary, and you're currently working on a second master's in divinity. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And let me get to your programs. I see where you've been victim awareness in 2010, 100 hours pre-release in 2010. Thank you for a change in 2011. Anger management, racial cage, 2011. Living in balance, parts 1 and 2, 2013. Residential drug abuse program at Louisiana State Penitentiary in January of 2020. We have multiple certificates of completion and participation in Inside DAG. The first one's starting around 206, 207, up to 216. You have a completion of the Kairos leadership training, and you train to be a facility with that Kairos leadership training. And in March of 2020, you completed an 8-week course in finding higher ground. Tell us about finding higher ground. What did you get in that program?
Finding Higher Ground is a program that was written by a former incarcerated person, and we sit around the table and discuss various topics, biblical topics dealing with manhood, how to approach different situations that we are faced with within inside the prison, or personally family situations that we may be going through. So what I've learned out of that program was, really how to channel my energies, my thoughts towards conflicting situations that may arise in the prison. It also helped guide me to some biblical principles as it relates to how to better grow in the Word of God, because it's like almost like a faith-based foundation to higher ground. And what we do is we go out after that and try to minister to the guys through various sporting events. When higher ground is working, we facilitate those classes, and I've learned a whole lot from that class by just growing as a man, trying to be responsible.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. You're also certified with IC3, which is a digital literacy. You have a bilingual proficiency certificate in the American Sign Language Association. Which languages are you certified in?
in American Sign Language and also in transcribing, a certified transcriber of Braille.
Okay. And you have many, and I'm not gonna go through all of them, and you have many faith-based programs that you completed. And I also want to mention that you completed the compassionate cultivation training program, and that was in 2017, and the reentry club in 2017, and just a multitude of other programs. Are there any special programs that you would like to mention that you completed?
One of the important programs to me, which is I would say that I've completed, victim awareness has given me tremendous insight into the pain and that I've caused family members, people I've hurt as a result of my action. It showed me the ripple effect of my actions. I also this program, this substance abuse program, which is called RDAP, and Thinking for a Change. Those programs intertwine with each other because it helps to show the 5 stages of change that people go through in their lives. That program helped me to identify where I was and how I was able to move forward in identifying my level of rehabilitation and growth and change in my life. So those 3 programs were very significant in helping me to identify things that I wasn't that much aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Next, we're going to go to letters of recognition and acknowledgement. You have a letter of recognition from the National Federation of the Blind. You have a letter from retired Ward Gary Young. You have a letter from Samantha Angel, who works with the reentry program. You have a letter of appreciation from Warden Kane. You have a letter from Ms. Angela Bell Allen, who is a faculty member at Southern, for your participation in the 2010 Juvenile Justice Forum. Another letter from Warden Kane. You also have a letter from the West Feliciana Parish Drug and Alcohol Awareness Council for your contributions with their program. And you have a letter from the Billy Graham Evangelist Association for your participation in the Angola 206 Franklin Graham Festival. You have a letter from a writer with the Inside Journal. Thank you for your interview on the life of a lifer. You have a letter of commendation from the Willow Creek Community Church. And last one I'm going to mention, because there's others, a letter of accommodation from the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. So let's talk about the letters of support. I'm going to go to that right now. We have letters of support from a former offender, John Esteem, who is the founder of the Second Wind Nonprofit Association. We have a letter from Troy Malone, who works with the reentry program in New Orleans. We have a letter from Kelly Garrett, a friend. We have a letter from your fiance and the mother of your daughter or daughters, Stephanie Smith. We have a letter from her son, Benjamin Wilborn. You have a letter from your daughter, Renetta Smith, who says she's your second oldest daughter. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You have a letter from your daughter's fiance, Ms. Danielle Jones. You have a letter from her son, Mr. Ryan O'Neill Smith. You have a letter from Trinity Wilborn, another daughter. You have a letter from Robin Meloso, a friend. And I think this one interests me more than any. We have a letter from Anita M. Gaines. She is the wife of an offender or former offender who you ministered to when he was struggling while he was incarcerated, and he also helped the family while he was incarcerated. We have a letter from the New Orleans Public Defender's Office, a letter from Fight for Freedom Project, and a friend, Whitney Vandergross, and Lynn Vandergross. We have a letter from your parents, Miss Catherine and Hammond Hicks, supporting your clemency. We have a letter from your Aunt Charlotte. A letter from a former teacher at Louisiana State Penitentiary, Barry Colby. We have a letter from your Aunt Ramona. And lastly, we have a letter from Congressman Clay Higgins from the 3rd Congressional District of Louisiana in support of you, and saying he understands and the victims of this victim's family is suffering and in pain. That's the extent of the letters of support. I'm almost sure that your attorney will mention some others at the appropriate time. Let's talk about your disciplinary conduct. Your disciplinary conduct, you have a total of 4 write-ups and 32 years of incarceration. Only 3 of those write-ups are Class B write-ups. We have no violent disciplinary action in the 32 years, and your last write-up was on October 13th, 1994, some 28 and a half years ago. Outstanding disciplinary record, Mr. Hicks. At this time, Warden Hooper, do you have any comments, remarks, or observations?
I think Mr. Rochelle say you touched on pretty much everything. I mean, he's completed everything we've asked him to do, and you were very thorough on your report, so we have nothing to add. He is a low risk factor.
Thank you, Warden Hooper. Madam Chairman, I do have a recommendation in this case that I will share with my fellow board members at the conclusion of this interview.
So thank you, Mr. Roche. We have multiple folks on who are here, both in opposition and in favor. Our rules will allow for only 3 people to speak in support, 3 people to speak in opposition. Each of those persons will have a limit of 3 minutes to voice their opinion. So first, I'd like to hear from support. Could we hear from Professor Bell, please?
Good morning. I have been a licensed attorney in Louisiana for 25 years and a law professor for 15 of those years. I first became acquainted with Ron Hicks 13 years ago when I organized the Juvenile Justice Forum, which is a program that I designed to help children avoid choices that could lead to incarceration. Of all of the men in custody at Angola that year, the Angola administration selected Ron Hicks for participation. The audience was captivated as Ron spoke, not necessarily because he's such a gifted speaker, but because of an obvious cross that he came to bear that day. As I watched him, I saw the agonizing weight of regret on display that day. I witnessed remorse. I heard repentance with every word that he spoke. And in the weeks leading up to that event, the children expressed great anticipation. And after, they told me often about nuggets that they recalled, particularly from Ron's remarks. With the passage of time, I soon came to understand that what appeared to be assistance to me that day was actually an act of atonement for Ron, possibly even a moment of redemption. Since then, I've had occasion to see Ron live the message he spoke that day. I've caught glimpses of him doing his pioneering work with the Malachi Dads, creating programming inside Angola, leading classes, engaging in ministry work or Bible studies, assisting other justice-impacted people, or even the administration itself. As I prepared for today, I reviewed that 2010 program and noticed that that program was dedicated to the memory of Henry Belair, who was a respected icon in the Baton Rouge community. And Mr. Belair was gunned down by young people in 2007. Mr. Belair was not just a program insert that year, but he was actually a mentor of mine. And he was someone who I deeply cherish. I still ache about that loss. But that program contained a charge, and that charge that the audience received that day was to transform Mr. Belair's death into a departure and to go on and live that Belair standard. The theme that year for the 2010 Juvenile Justice Forum was choices are free, but consequences cost. Undeniably, Ron's choice cost the victim's family, and his community immeasurable pain. Spent 32 years making a deposit on a debt that he will never be able to pay. A grant of parole will not excuse his actions. It actually won't even release him because of the consciousness that he's adopted. He will never escape what he has done. It simply reassigns him to a new duty station where he can continue to live that Belair standard. And it is what the legislature envisioned when they made parole an option. I thank you for the opportunity to speak my remarks today.
Thank you. Appreciate your participation. Next, could we hear from Ronnie Olivier?
Stand right there, just a minute.
Hello, I'm Ronald Olivier. Pastor Hicks, he wears many hats in my life. Very close friend. He's my pastor, my mentor, my brother, and in some cases he was a father figure. I can remember when I first came, I went to prison at a young age. It was very difficult for me to really understand my fate and what had happened to me in being born again. But it was Ron Hicks who really discipled me and showed me an example of what a man of God looks like. He actually made it attractive. And today I am the director of chaplaincy at Mississippi State Penitentiary. And I'm here today to support him because I owe that to him. I wouldn't be where I am today without him. I can remember there was a time when when Pastor Hicks had moved from one yard to another out of his comfort zone into an area that they call the wild side. And I later went with him, but after 2 months in that dome was called a Christian dome. Pastor Hicks led prayer before work, and even before we went to sleep, and he led Bible studies there. And after years there, he completely changed the culture in that area, and it was no more classified as the wild side. I can remember there was a time when a riot was brewing. It was Pastor Hicks who mobilized the leaders to go talk to the guys who was going to lead this riot, and to this day they never had a riot. Everywhere he go, he influenced people for the positive. And our world is hurting, our community is hurting. I beg you, we need a Pastor Hicks in our communities today. And with that said, I'm gonna close with this. Just last week, I posted a picture of him on social media, just asking people to pray for him for this day. And I just asked him if he's impact your life in any way, just place a comment. And after 2 days, there were 158 comments about how he impact others' lives, mostly guys who have been in prison, who are home, who has families, or they're taxpaying citizens, and they're doing great. And they point back to Pastor Hicks because of what they're doing. And so with that, I just pray the board really consider that and give him a favorable decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander.
The opportunity this morning to come and share with you what I know. In the past 13 years, I've met Pastor Ron Hicks from Malachi Dads. And he has been not only a gentle leader, he's been a very humble man. A man that as I've grown deeply in favor of this day, where he has the opportunity essentially to be released and receive clemency. He has many awards. He's done many things while in prison. And I will tell you this, my heart hurts for the family. I know this is deep pain, but I also believe he has done everything asked of him. He is a perfect example of a man of being rehabilitated. And that is why we have rehabilitation in the prison system. We want men like Pastor Hicks to be able to come to the outside, and one day he will be pastoring a church, possibly in Baton Rouge or even in another community. Gentlemen like this have already impacted, I would say it's a lot more than 100. He's probably impacted close to 1,000 men over the past 30 years of being a pastor. I've only known him for 13 years, but in those 13 years, I have been touched by the way he listens intently. He cares deeply for other people. And I know he is very deeply remorseful of what he did 32 years ago. And I do suffer with you as well in this great pain. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, could we hear from Ms. Saint Romain, please?
I'm hearing all of these things that the Hicks has accomplished in prison. My son hasn't accomplished anything. He never saw his son. He never lived to see his nieces and his nephews, his sisters and his brother. Never got to have their big brother with him. His life was cut off. Some of these things that I've heard today that he said about the occurrence of what happened, never heard those things before. I've never heard of it. I work at the district attorney's office in St. Landry Parish. Attorney General's office handled this case because I worked at the DA's office. These things They're new to me. My thing is, when he was sentenced to life without probation, parole, or suspension of sentence, this is the second time that we've been here with him trying to get out of prison. If he's remorseful and he's doing all these things in prison, he's accomplished a lot in prison. He's helping these people who are there. Then maybe that is the place for him to be. The law said he wasn't going to come out. The only solace that our family has is that we don't have to run into him on the streets. We don't have to worry about it at any time. His sentence was life. Life. I cannot go and visit my son except in the graveyard. I can clean his grave and I can put flowers on it. That's all I can do. His son can never do that. He can never see him. This pain will never, ever go away. And if he's remorseful for this, then why does he want to say that I'm able to get out of prison and live my life now? Why? I respectfully ask that he stays in prison. And let me say one more thing. I believe in God, and I believe in forgiveness. And I believe in my heart. I forgive his act. I forgive it. But I still think that his sentence should be carried out. Yes.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you. Would you introduce yourself?
My name is C Hicks DOC. I'm the aunt of James. And when Mr. Roche said the things about his best friend being Hicks, and James and Hicks being selling drugs together, this is the first time we have heard this in 32 years. We've never seen this in police reports. We've never had that brought up to us. I have a best friend that I grew up with 48 years. My best friend would never get shot by me, would never get murdered by me. That's my best friend. So, you know, him saying that that was his best friend and they sold drugs together, our family just doesn't believe that because this is the first time we've ever heard this before. I'm a former law enforcement officer here in Annapolis also. I'm a former sheriff deputy in St. Landry Parish. I'm a veteran of the United States Army. I've seen a lot of things in my lifetime having to do with death, having to do with killing, and having to do with any type of crime. I just feel like the state of Louisiana says that if you're convicted of second-degree murder, then your time in prison is for life. And I respectfully ask that it continue that way. Hicks did mention that he knows that he impacted family. He never said our family. He just said family. And I assume that means his family. Our family will never, ever get over the death of James. At every family gathering, at every moment of our life, for 32 years, we know how much we miss him. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We do have,
Excuse me, can I say something?
well, sir, we have Mr. Barry Milligan with the AG's office. Sir, we'd like to hear from your office.
Madam Chairperson, Mr. Roche, members of the board, thank you for letting me talk. I was contacted by Ms. St. Romain. Our office prosecuted this case, I believe, back in 1990. And I'm here today in support of her and the other family members of the victim, and to officially give notice of opposition of the Attorney General's office to this application for clemency. As the board heard from the victims' family members, this is something that they unfortunately are forced to live with forever. And while I acknowledge the efforts that Mr. Hicks has made while he's been incarcerated, and they are admirable efforts, it's our position that a St. Landry Parish judge and jury convicted and sentenced this man to life in prison, and we are asking the board to deny this application.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hicks, before we turn it over to your attorney to close it out for us, is there something you'd like to say to us?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to thank this honorable board for giving me the opportunity to come before it. I want to say that the pain and hurt that I've caused James' family, I would never be able to repay that. I would never be able to do anything to change my actions. That I take full responsibility. James did not deserve this. And with all of my heart and my soul, for the rest of my life, I will continue to work to try to make sure that no one else that comes into my presence will turn out to create a victim, because I understand the pain that people that are victims go through, like James' family. And it's my remarks of regret and responsibility for the things that I've done, the crime that I've committed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Thank you. When I was waiting for the bus at the front gate of Angola to come here with Ron Hicks's family, Major Anthony came over to me and said, "Ron Hicks is a man that I really hope goes home." And he said he doesn't do that for many people. Similarly, Captain Marshal Pierre wrote in his letter that Ron's selflessness causes a person to take inventory of themselves. And he praised Ron's outstanding lifestyle. This is the Ron Hicks of today, someone who has proven himself over the last 3 decades to be giving, trustworthy, and dependable. Someone who, in the words of Lieutenant Colonel Jones, has demonstrated rehabilitation on every level. It's not every day that a client of ours receives a letter of support from a US congressperson, but US Congressperson Clay Higgins did that. And not only did he attest to his personal knowledge of Ron's outstanding character, but he also promised to personally assist in Ron's transition if he is released one day. We're also joined today, and he wasn't able to speak, by Tyrone Glover, who has had personal and meaningful experiences with Ron as well. My heart is heavy, as Ron's is, for Ms. St. Romain and the rest of the family of James, in particular his son. And the anniversary has just come by, and Ron expressed to me grief on that day as well. Ron made the terrible decision to commit this crime when his life was in complete disarray, and violence was how he dealt with conflict. But over 33 years, he's worked hard to change his mindset and become a man who is now incapable of hurting another person ever again. It's with the knowledge that Ron had that he could not change the horror of his actions that he committed his life to positive change. He has a gift for helping young people change their course. Warden Sanders often looks to Ron to support his programs because of this special ability of Ron's to relate to troubled young men. Reentry Court Project Coordinator Lindsay J. Jeffrey saw this too. And while Ron was a reentry mentor, the court assigned Ron the harder mentees, the people who were struggling in the program. Even after this role ended, Ron continued to mentor men, as you've heard, in his role as senior pastor, a role he's been in almost his entire incarceration. Numerous people have said that their rehabilitation has stemmed from the love and compassion that Ron showed them. Most people only dream of leading such an extensive and impactful ministry, but Ron actually did that. He's been a trustee for 26 years, as Mr. Roche noted, and he was permitted to leave the prison grounds, as we heard from Professor Alan Bell. Ron can't change what he did 33 years ago, but what he could change, he did. He reflected deeply not just on the pain he caused, but on the things that brought him to that terrible moment. And he takes responsibility not just for what he did, but for who he was. It's been his life's mission to address those frailties within himself and work to better the world and those around him. He educated himself, and he's done all the programs that he could do. But he's done more than that. He facilitated those programs too. including RDAP, Thinking for a Change, and numerous others. In short, there's not much left for Ron to do within the department, and he's ready to harness his transformation and all he's learned to create positive change outside of prison walls. As you make this important decision today, please consider this incredible transformation that Ron has undergone in the decades since he was 19. He is uniquely exceptional in his achievements, and we pray that you recommend Ron for a commutation of sentence to 65 years. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Prepared to vote, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, I am. Madam Chairman, fellow board members, first of all, I would like to address the victim's family. I want to thank you for attending the hearing today. Your input into this process is very important. I can't even begin to understand the pain, the suffering, the mental and emotional effects, the loneliness, the anguish of losing a loved one to a violent offense at a very early age, even before you begin to experience life. Again, I'd like to thank you for your participation. This board is mandated by the Constitution and revised statute in the state of Louisiana to review offenders who have worked to fully rehabilitate themselves and mature to the point where they can be reintegrated back into the mainstream of society. And this is mandated by Louisiana law. And I've sat on this board for 7 years. I have not seen an individual who meets that mandate more than Ron Christopher Hicks. He's had an overwhelmed, excellent performance while incarcerated. He earned a GED only 3 years after being incarcerated. He is now working on a second master's of divinity at the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. He has not had a write-up in 28 and a half years, and only 3 serious write-ups in 32 years of incarceration. He has taken all the basic good time program to rehabilitate himself, and then he proceeded to help the other inmates. The right he lived in a dome that was considered uncontrollable. Within 3 years, he had brought civilization to that dome. They would pray before work and pray before going to bed at night. He has pastored in performing his pastoral responsibility for the last 21 years. He has helped the hard of hearing and the deaf who's incarcerated with him to go about their daily lives as an interpreter. He facilitates many programs. He's worked and participated in Point Lookout Project. This project buries the offenders whose family can't afford it or they don't claim the body at the time he dies incarcerated. They see that this offender gets a proper burial. He's mentored the reentry program and many other programs. He has an excellent transition plan with the Louisiana Parole Project. There's a job waiting for him in Baton Rouge. Lastly, he has positive remarks from the warden and staff at Louisiana State Penitentiary. But I know this is no consolation. If and when he's ever released from incarceration, he has to go through the parole project. He has to go through the parole process. And if I was on the panel, he would have strict restrictions of that supervision, never to return as a permanent citizen of the city of Opelousas, Louisiana, and he would have no contact with the victim or the victim's family. Because of everything I just mentioned, my recommendation to my board members is that we commute his sentence to 65 years with immediate parole eligibility. Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Mirabella.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I also would like to thank the family of the victims for being here today. Your pain and grief comes through. I do understand that. I can't imagine what it's to lose a loved one the way you lost a loved one. Our responsibility is to look at those facts and to listen to the victims, have you as part of this process. That's one factor that we look at. Our responsibility is to also look at Mr. Hicks and what he's accomplished, who he is and what he's done since he's been in there. And as Mr. Roche has outlined in great detail in his presentation as well as in his ruling, Mr. Hicks has an excellent record in prison. He's accomplished many things. He's done a lot of good things for those in prison. He's a trusted person there. He's got an excellent transition plan. My vote likewise would be to recommend to the governor to continue the sentence to 65 years in immediate parole.
Thank you, Mr. Mirabella. Mr. Freeman.
I concur with everything been said on my fellow board members, to the family, and I also vote to grant commute to 65 years.
Also to the family. These cases are very hard. They're very emotional. Every time we have a case comes up for pardon consideration, it almost always involves the loss of someone's life and always involves pain of the survivors. And it makes it very difficult. It really does. And I'm not just saying it to say that the heart really goes out to each one of you. But for me, I have to look at, I think about 19 years old. Who among us would want our whole life to be defined by who we were at 19? Irresponsible, impulsive, out of control, whatever the case may be. Who wants to be forever defined by who they were at that age? Have to look at who he is today. The point, one of the points of the correctional system is to correct, to redeem. And as Christians, we recognize that redemption is a gift from God. True redemption is a gift from God. And as such, we should rejoice that God has taken one who has done terrible thing when brought redemption is only God can do in a person's life. And we have seen that manifested in how Mr. Hicks has lived his life for the vast majority of his time incarceration. What I also think about is the number of young people out there right now that kill somebody today or tomorrow or the next day. And they would only have the opportunity to have contact with Mr. Hicks. It's too late. Once they've already done the thing. But I believe that Mr. Hicks is a person who can impact the life before they get to that. You know, there are some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful programs at DOC. And it's been on my mind and my heart. Why do we wait until they're incarcerated to expose them to those programs that are life-changing in so many respects? And I believe that Mr. Hicks has the opportunity to change someone's life before they kill someone, before they commit an unthinkable crime. And so, because of all the things that have already been enumerated today, I believe that Mr. Hicks has truly redeemed himself and that he had a lot to offer the community. And so my vote today, likewise, would be to recommend commutation to 65 years.
All right, Mr. Hicks, you know what the outcome is. You've received 4 favorable votes. I do concur with my colleagues. My vote would be the same. So if I have, we'll make the recommendation to Governor Edwards that your sentence be commuted to 65 years with immediate parole.
Thank you.
It's the largest group I think we've ever seen fit into that room. I tried finding like documentation of the crime that initially happened 33 years ago in 1990, but I couldn't find it. But I disagree with, I mean, I can only just simply agree with everything that the board said. He was a young kid, obviously made a huge mistake, but everything he's done, the prison system is meant to punish, it's meant to keep society safe, it's meant to rehabilitate. It's done all those things, and he's going to be able to make the world a better place. It's terrible when the victim's family comes in anguish and pain, but I think it's, you know, if there was anyone who should get released, it would be this man, and that's all I can share on that, on my thoughts. With that, I'll let you go.